Hey everyone, this is Robert. Thank you for tuning in to the show. And we have our returning guest once again for the third, if I'm not
I don't
mistaken.
know. I don't know why
Yeah.
not you're not tired of me, but okay.
Yeah. But yeah, this is Dev Ross once again. Thank you so much for joining me on this lovely afternoon.
You're so welcome. Hey everybody.
Yeah. And I know that certainly there's a lot that has just been, well, both of us have been relatively busy and we're just gonna go with the flow and just have a nice little catch up again. So
Absolutely.
yeah, just tell us everything that you've been up to and what's been going on your side of town.
Well, it's been pretty. I just relocated back to California to Los Angeles, and so that's been exciting. Just getting back into the city that I was that I came up in and worked at Disney and Universal. So it's really nice to be back, though Hollywood is very different now than it was before. And we are all reinventing ourselves, and you especially, Robert. So that's great doing your own thing. So I've been doing my own thing. I am shooting my first live action youth movie in July in Arizona, in Sedona, Arizona. It's called Weird Detention. It's a musical and it's for the older people that perhaps listen to your broadcast. It's like a musical breakfast club. So you have three kids, teenagers, really going through their stuff with three comical diva singers. I have some amazing vocalists that are going to be shooting the movie with me. I'm very, very excited. And it should be available hopefully by the first of the next year. It'll be online. It'll be given to schools for free. It's going to be on YouTube. So we're very, very excited about it. It's kind of educational at the same time, though it's deeply, deeply entertaining. So some great, great original songs in it. So I'm doing that. And that actually took me like 6 years to get up off the ground from conception to raising all our own money and getting the crew together. It's been a long, long haul, but it's been very exciting. And I've made every mistake in the book, corrected it, and then gone on to finally get together. To learn how to produce something is very different than, of course, being just a creator. So that's what I'm doing. And then my play. This year I wrote a play called The Dead Quilters Society and had no idea. It's also a musical. Had no idea that it was going to have the impact it's having on audiences. So we're doing our fourth opening at this is we've played three different theaters. We're going back to our original theater and reopening the show with more material. We've been invited to Europe, uh, which is why I'm reopening with more material to try it out. And we're going to be going on tour. And I've already had a film producer approach me about making it a film, but I'd like to try it first and develop it as a play. So it's like I said, it's also a musical. It's five women, five dead women on stage quilting. So it's very kind of interesting in that it deals with a lot of topics that relate to women. So that's it. That's basically what I've been doing. I just was up for just found out a few seconds ago that an animated film that I was up for, they decided they're going to it's also a play that they're going to take 2 more years developing it as a play. So there goes that. So, you have to have so many different irons in the fire. That's what I'm up to.
Yeah, so you've certainly been doing a lot. Like I think I've
Yes.
shared with you about my own stuff. I've shared a couple of
Mhm.
scripts and projects with you, but the big one that I'm doing right now is Solomon Shrine, which is about these high school students that are going through a maze and they have to work together and collaborate just to make it out of there and survive, which not entirely the most original plot, but just something that I've always loved doing. Like I always really liked psychological horror and just psychological thriller stuff. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I think just exploring what, why, or what draws them together, what makes them get along, or are they just going to be constantly at odds? Are they going to be, working together? Just defeat. evil, stuff like that. So that's pretty much what it's all about. And episodes should be releasing sometime over the course of, because I know that it technically does take place in the summer. So the production is going to be lasting all throughout the summer, and then you probably should see episode one towards the end of the year, and a couple
Great,
of other stuff that I got coming up in the pipeline for my YouTube channel.
great.
So that's
Congratulations.
thank you. Yeah, so I'm pretty excited about that, and it's just going to be a lot of fun. And other than that, just continuing to keep my head above water, just trying not to watch the news too often, and yeah,
I
just pretty
know.
much. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah, I know. Well, you had some questions that you wanted to ask me, that
Yeah,
you
for
sent
sure.
to me, but that I don't have in front of me. So if there's anything specifically you'd like me to address, I think one of them was how my acting career affected my writing. Was that
Yeah, I'll definitely get to the questions in just a little bit.
okay?
But yeah,
Sure.
just like I was saying, just try not to let the real world stuff really affect me. But it's just at the end of the day, like we're just still here, we're still breathing, and we're still doing what we love, and just being really creative, and yeah, just getting to do this crazy, these shenanigans for a living is like, what more can you ask for, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. So and just a lot of, taking care of oneself because that's super important these days. Um, so that's pretty much what's been going on with me. Just doing cons every once in a while and just having a good time. But I know you kind of don't want to hear about convention stories. That's not what it's about. So let's get to the questions that I have for you today. In terms of media, I'm trying to remember if this was something you answered last time before, but what would you say were very, like, in terms of movies, shows, or just anything that really inspired you? What was something that left a very profound impact on you as a
Well,
person and as a creator?
yeah, I know exactly what it was, and y'all are too young, way too young to even remember. But Paul Sills, back in the day on television, did a TV show called Story Theater. And it was actors basically using their physical bodies and voice to enact fairy tales. And they made these fairy tales through their vocal changes. I mean, you have friends who do voices and things, so you know through their vocal changes, through how they would mime riding a horse or climbing a castle, the castle wall. I was very, very young when I watched it, and I was glued to how they made these stories absolutely come alive, just vocally, physically, with their imaginations. Their imaginations made me see a castle, made me see the surroundings. And I was so deeply affected by that that I immediately started to write, as a young kid, write my own stories. And later, Paul Sill's mother was Viola Spolin, and I read her book about story theater, and I was just enamored. And it continued from my childhood, through college, and after college, after reading her book and being so enamored of them, I was hired by a theater company to tour and write original shows and to tour. And I brought all of that forward from Paul Sills and put it into that theater, and that very element made us explode. We ended up, I mean, we were exploding with popularity. We toured all over the United States. And from there, we ended up doing 5 years worth of television shows, based on that same principle. So that was it. It was me being a little girl watching story theater on television and just saying, I want that for my life. I want that creativity. And it never changed. And now I'm old and it still hasn't changed. I still want to do it. I still am doing it. When you see my movie, you'll see it's it will be very emblematic of what I came from as a child. So yeah, that was my inspiration.
I'll probably include a link when by the time this goes up, so people can check out the show that you're talking about, and
Yeah.
that way we'll have homework to study and check out something new because yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
always explore something new is pretty much my motto.
Yeah. 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 So that was mine. And then you had other questions, so
Yeah,
please, please.
for sure. And what was something that also helped you a lot as a storyteller from your extensive background of wearing a lot of different hats, so to
Yeah,
speak,
I
as a
think the
reader?
most important thing for me was studying acting, because I started in the business as an actor, um, actor singer. Uh, Studying acting, I think for a writer is almost mandatory. Is even if you never want to act, just sitting in on an acting class or certainly participating, you begin to understand character in a way that non-actors do. The who, what, why, where, when of an actor and why they make choices. And when I first got to Disney, I had come in, I was fresh, young, really had I had done a lot of theater writing, but never television. And the reason why they liked my writing so much is because they said my characters were full. Excuse me, I'm gonna sneeze. Shoo, shoo, excuse me.
Bless you.
Air conditioning on for the first time, and it's like I think too much dust. Anyways,
Oh yeah, LA.
yeah.
My God.
I was hearing from everybody at Disney, oh, your characters are so three-dimensional, so they're so full. And animated characters often were not three-dimensional. Sure, excuse me. So, and I just said, well, every character I write, who are they? Not just, Darkwing Duck is the hero of the show, but Darkwing Duck is and who is he emotionally and where is he coming from and what does he want? Oh, what is his intention? He wants to protect his daughter, but he wants to also fight villains and protect his community, and he feels passionately about that. What are his flaws? His ego. Uh it's his, appeal to his ego, and you might be able to get some evil in there. Uh how do we how does he feel about the people around him? What is his attitude towards his daughter? What is his feeling and attitudes towards Launchpad? And you start mining all of these things, and you end up with more interesting three-dimensional characters, which I think which is why shows like Darkwing Duck were so successful. The Rescue Rangers were so successful because we actually got into who they were more personally. And so again, studying acting was whether you want to be a director or actor yourself or writer. I think it's important. So I learned acting, I learned writing. I've done a lot of stage directing. I'm just now getting into film directing, but uh, stage acting and directing have really, really helped me, especially when you're writing animation and you have to direct that stuff in your head. So that would answer that question, I think.
Yeah, certainly. And on the subject of Darkwing, I know that when we were talking previously, it was, just figuring out who these characters were and
Uh,
getting to collab really closely with Tad Stones on both shows was like with Rescue Rangers and Darkwing. It's because when you really watch the original show, like for Darkwing Duck, you kind of start to figure out that it's not really like I know it's supposed like when you really watch the show and then learning about the behind the scenes history, and then watching the finish and how it evolved over time and how we ended up getting the classic that it is today, and it still is. So I really think that it was a show that it was a Disney like I know that a lot of Disney shows kind of focus on like, a lot of um characters that are very colorful and cheerful. For
yeah.
Darkwing, it's kind of more like it's somewhat satirical, but at the same time, it's doing his own original thing. James Bond-esque influence in there, and then just having a superhero kind of theme to it. Because at the time when we had a lot of the superhero cartoons, it was mainly like stuff, you know, um, it was the G.I. Joe, Transformers, the
Right.
action-based stuff, He-Man. So we didn't
And
really
none of
get,
them had
yeah, yeah.
daughters. The
They
big
no,
thing
they
is
didn't. Yeah,
they didn't have,
no.
so when you had a kid and you have a superhero or heroic character having to consider their daughter or a child, it changes things. And I think that that's what gave Darkwing such heart at the same time, because again, it makes him more of a three-dimensional character. If you have, you know, you're a hero on a quest, you got to do something, but you got to go home and feed your cat. You still have real world problems, and I think people relate to that. It's like, oh, yeah, I
Stu's
got to
got to
go
pay
home and
his
feed my cat.
bills. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I think it just makes them more relatable. And I think that that's part of, he was a crazy, wild, eccentric character, but he was still relatable. He had friends, he had problems with his friendships. He falls in love. He falls in love with the wrong girl. I created Morgana for him because I wanted him to fall in love with the wrong girl. And who doesn't fall in love with the wrong person at one point in time? And so just think it was so much fun, especially working with Tad and our staff, Kevin Hops, and all the other great people. It just, like I said, we would roundtable and chew up these ideas and, make being fantastical but relatable.
Exactly. I think that was one of the biggest strengths of Darkwing. It's you have these characters that are just very eccentric and just have these, crazy kind of works to them. But at the end of the day, they are still okay. So Darkwing, he fights crime, but then he comes home, takes care of his daughter, and you get like a lot of these really sweet emotional moments with them. And I think
Mhm.
that's kind of what separates it from the other Disney shows at the time, because like I said, it has a lot of these characters. It focuses a lot on their dynamics and relationships. And
Mhm.
I mean, even with the case of Rescue Rangers, because you have because they run a business and they save people, but then you also have episodes that focus on their slice of life stories on what would happen if, like, for example, like what happens if Dale ends up switching places with the creature, or Gadget
Dale beside
just having
himself.
to he's
That was
beside
Dale
himself. Yeah.
beside himself. That episode, Tad and I wrote that, where an alien, Dale becomes an alien
Oh yeah, yeah.
copies his identity, and we had such fun with that one. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
And it's also like with the villains too. Because I think it was around the same time that we also had shows like Batman, Gargoyles, which kind of came a little after, but
yeah. Gargoyles
we
was
also had,
after.
yeah, so we also had the villains that were kind of sorta also a bit relatable, but at the end of the day, they're still kind of like, look, Nega wants to take over a city, and then he
Yeah,
likes bombs and explosions. So
yeah,
so you still have like a little bit of cartooniness, but still keeping them grounded to the point where they're
yeah.
not
But you
like,
think of
yeah,
Negaduck. Negaduck is Darkwing's alter ego,
oh
and so
yeah,
when you look
yeah.
at our own art alter ego, I have a side, I have my Pollyanna sweet side, love everybody, be kind. And then I have the part that wants to just go and take somebody and punch them. And, or, I still have that dark side. And I think that's what Negaduck, Darkwing is a hero, but Negaduck is his likeness and his dark side. And so we explored the dark side. And I think that that's why, maybe he's less dimensional than Darkwing, but he's still the dark side of his personality. And so psychologically, I think it works. And people don't know why they like it so much, maybe at first, especially young audiences, but it's all part of our own personalities.
Yeah, because I always think about the episode where it was Time and Punishment, which I'm
Excuse
pretty
me.
sure. Oh, sorry.
Wait, no, I'm sorry. That sneezing is making my nose run. So I'm sorry. Could you repeat that, please, Robert?
No, sorry, because you were kind of saying, excuse me, but I always think about that episode, Time and Punishment, which I believe you wrote, where
Yes,
it's
I
pretty
did. Yeah.
much what people see in Negaduck, Darkwing could easily become
Yes.
be bad just at the drop of a hat if something were to happen, like his daughter Goslin disappearing. So he
Yeah.
could easily become just as, if not even worse, like
Sure.
when you watch that episode. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the one episode that people often talk about when it comes to, best Darkwing episodes. And yeah, I can kind of see it, but you also have to understand that this is kind of from like what would happen if Darkwing actually loses his mind in a very because he doesn't just lose his mind in like a something cartoonish happens like I don't know
Hmm.
he hits his head and gets amnesia or something, but
Right.
no,
Right.
this is something actually terrible happening to him,
Right.
which yeah, and I often that is often an episode that it's very mature, but it's also gives you a sense of what would happen scenario, and it really does a really great take on having a egotistical superhero, but having him just absolutely go insane, just taking over an
Right.
entire city, just authoritative, like just full on authoritarian style. So
Yeah. Yeah. And
it's
they
it's
say
pretty deep.
absolute power corrupts absolutely. I mean, there's certain cliches like that, but the fact is that we don't know what we don't know. And when you have a character like him, uh, who has a certain personality, a certain presentation, but you put them in a new situation and the sky's the limit. We don't know what we don't know. We don't know what we will do under that kind of pressure or circumstance. And I think it's really it was really important for us to explore that, the full push the envelope with him and his personality and where he could go. Whereas a lot of superheroes have, well, I either act like A, B, or C, but I'm always heroic, I'm always brave, I'm always this. And so, and anyways, I do think I've thought a lot about it, a lot of like, why was this show so popular? Why is it enduring? And I mean, there's a myriad of reasons, and I think a lot of it is because we pushed the envelope and made broader choices for these characters than had been perhaps done in earlier shows, in earlier Disney shows.
It's kind of the same way I feel when you watch the Gargoyles once again, where you have these really multi-layered characters and you also bring in a lot of like Shakespearean Hamlet allegories to the
Yes.
show. And
Yes.
I think that's also the
Yes.
reason why it caught on. So I talked to one of the voice actors, and I think the reason why the Gargoyles themselves were very much, they still resonate with audiences because they relate to, I mean, being a night owl is also one thing, but it's also like feeling the sense of isolation, like they've lost everything. They're in a new environment, they're in a
Mm-hmm.
world that is not the same as it once was. So I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of that is also what is very relatable to a lot of us. Like right now, it's like things are so much different than it was when we were kids. So
Right.
how do we adapt to it? How do we
Yeah.
figure
I
out
think,
what are we doing in life? Yeah.
yeah, I think that's a really good point. I'm going to switch it, but I don't know how many of you out there are Walking Dead fans. When I first put on that, I was told, oh, you got to watch it. And I was like, oh, God, no, zombies. Ew, no, I don't want zombies, flesh eating, ugh, always the same. Then I got really caught up into it because, yeah, the external action is fighting zombies, The Walking Dead. But was really interesting and relatable is you take all kinds of different people, the mailman, the you put them in a situation like that where they become villains or they're heroic, they create community, they're loners. You see how in an adverse environment they reshape their lives and how they adjust and grow and evolve. And that's what kept, now that show is spun off into how many different shows. following different characters because we got so deeply involved in these characters and the difficult choices they had to make. And I think, to me, that's just the best TV right now, or the best viewing is like you look in your show. Yeah, you say, yeah, it's not a difficult situation. They have to make it through. Yeah, okay, that's a scenario. That's the Wizard of Oz. We got to get back home. I mean, we use that. My show is not that much different, my movie that I'm doing, but it's how these our characters unfold and make choices. That's what's interesting. That's what's gonna, why your show will be so good, because you have very definitive characters making difficult choices. And we like that. We like that.
Absolutely. Because when you watch the show, I'm not going to speak too much on it because episodes are still, you know, yeah, none. Well, we released a teaser for it, but even then, it's like you kind of start to see the seeds that are being planted because
Mhm.
they're outside. It has a lot of some scary stuff in it, but the overall theme, it's friendship and having your loved ones be by your side in the midst of hardships or just being thrust into a situation that you didn't really want. So how are you going to navigate through it? And that's pretty much life in general, where we all get thrust into like family emergencies or just
Mhm.
really crappy situations that we never thought in a million years we'd be pulled into. But how are we going to get past it? How are we going to come together and solve this issue as a team? So that's pretty much another main theme that I'm going to be having for Solomon going forward. But for the themes that I mentioned with gargoyles and also, I mean, Batman. I mean, it was Warner Brothers, it or on Fox, but it still very much applies. Also came out around the same time, but I mean, Batman. I mean, come on, how many stories? Everybody knows of how he became Batman, where his parents were murdered. But
Right.
in the show, like when you watch the original animated series from the 90s, he was definitely not perfect because he also had flaws and he
Mhm.
couldn't really can't save everyone. And all the villains, like when you see the Joker, Two-Face, Penguin, each of them have very different, very distinct, backgrounds and tragedies that have happened to them. And that's what makes them very complex, unique, and they're just not like, I'm just villain of the day just cuz. No, it's that
Yeah.
they I think there was one episode where they're on trial and in a way Batman kind of created them, which is kind of a really interesting plot point because you have
Yeah.
Batman who is just being a hero, but then you have the bad, not really, they weren't even originally bad guys. They were drove into the states that they're in right now because Batman was kind of indirectly responsible for their downfalls, which
Yeah.
that's not something that I see a lot in media where the hero accidentally creates a villain. And I
Mhm.
think the similar thing kind of happened to I think some of the the what are their names? My gosh, for Darkwing. The big five.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, for with them, because like in a way they kind of sorta act whether by accident or just by utter yeah, just complete mishaps or just sheer unluckiness. Like I think I remember it was the Liquidator that also became a villain after falling in a kind of like
Yeah.
similar to the Joker from like the
Yeah. Yeah.
89
Very
Batman
similar.
film.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so I think it's in a lot of ways you could say that sometimes when a hero accidentally creates a villain is like one of my personal favorite storytelling tropes because in a way you could just see that not all superheroes that wear capes are entirely innocent, and I think that's a pretty interesting way
Yeah,
to
well,
just subvert it. Yeah.
it makes great storytelling fodder. And I think for people who are creating the best thing that I ever learned as a writer was every villain is the hero of their
Mhm.
own story. In
Yeah.
their minds, they're the hero. I have to destroy the world to let it start all over again because man is so evil, or you if you make them really believe that they're doing the world a good one, even though there might be some pain, then they become very interesting. They become empathetic even to the, and the villains that you're talking about that were created by a mishap of the hero are empathetic, but they also choose evil.
Exactly.
So they're empathetic, but they've chosen evil, so they're not perfect. So, then they're multi-layered to
Exactly.
write.
Exactly. And it's the fearsome five. I just remembered it.
Fearsome Five, yeah. I couldn't remember either. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's like I think I told you once that I wrote a film that's still being shopped around called Cain and Abel, but it was based on me interviewing a Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan in the state of Arkansas. And yeah, I mean, white supremacist to the max. The things he said were horrible. I'm still shook, but today, when I think back of some of the things he said, and yet when I would challenge him gently about his beliefs, he had a backstory for every single one of them that made him, he was damaged, really, really damaged. And I felt empathy for him. I couldn't stand his beliefs, but I felt empathy for him because this guy had been really hurt and really damaged. And so you begin to understand, oh, no wonder I think he's hateful. He thinks he's going to save the world.
Uh, I think that's something,
It's
yeah.
it's
Yeah, it's
subjective.
just,
It's not objective.
yeah. I, this is what I'm actually doing for my project, where
Hmm.
when you see it, you'll find that the bad guy, per se, well, quote unquote bad guy, this dude, like the villain that I'm having for this, it's like you said, they're damaged, like they're severely messed up. But we're going with in the case of like, oh, did something tragic happen to them? Where it's like, no, um, they chose down this path, and now that they're doing these horrible things to the students, it all comes down to, okay, what consequences is going to happen to them? Because sometimes in life, like even bad guys, criminals, crooks can get away with their actions, but most of the time, it kind of comes back to bite them. So this is something that we're kind of. I want to have the audience just second guess. It's like, oh, are they going to be punished? Are they going to get away with it? That's something that I
Hmm.
kind of want them to figure out because I always like subverting expectations with my audience. I think
And
that's something
as
that's
you
really
should. Yeah, as you should. Did you ever watch Deadwood? I don't know if you watch too much. The Deadwood was a terrific TV series about Deadwood, the city of Deadwood, which was, just crime ridden, Western series. And the villains never got their comeuppance. You kept waiting and you think, but the villain in the end, he gets away with it all. And and it was hard to watch emotionally because as an audience, we're used to the villain always prevail. I mean, the eventually the hero prevails, but in this, it was the villain prevailed, and the heroes basically had to either leave town or just say, "Okay, that's one for the villains," and it the choices were extraordinary. It made extraordinary characters, kind of dark, very dark to watch. But as a show creator, it's a show worth watching because it really shows good and evil uh, getting very messy and very entwined.
okay. Now that you brought it up, I vaguely remember it was on HBO back in the 2000s. Yeah, because I
Yes,
remember seeing it because it was everywhere. It was advertised a lot back in
yes,
the day. But yeah,
yes.
that's a show that definitely takes me back.
Yeah, yeah, but it's
Some up,
just when you
yeah.
it was genre changing, you
Yeah.
know.
I think I also remember I mean, the first one that I really distinctly remember of, yeah, sometimes the evil sometimes can get away with their actions just behind closed doors. And
Mhm.
everybody knows this. Disney's Pinocchio. I mean, when you really watch the movie years later, because I didn't even catch it when I was a kid, because it was just Pinocchio going out into the world. Because I thought the story was, yeah, he goes out, kind of was disobedient, which I kind of got that, and then terrible stuff happens to him. But I completely missed the part because you noticed how each and every single one of the villains, like Stromboli,
Hmm.
the guy behind Pleasure Island, all those guys, they kind of get off scot free when you notice years later.
Oh
And
yeah,
that's
if you
something
go
that,
back to
yeah,
yeah, if you read the original Pinocchio, because I
no,
actually was
yeah,
hired to do a live action Pinocchio script modern day. Didn't take off, but was hired by a producer to do it. And I went back to the original Pinocchio and talk about dark, talk
hmm
about
mm,
depressing, talk about violent. Oh
mm.
my gosh. So Disney took it and just, put flowers around it in comparison to
They,
what it really was.
that's pretty much most of their movies. They just put flowers all over it, but when you watch, when you read the original stories, I don't know if I can even say it on the podcast, but yeah, it's quite gruesome.
They're
Very
gruesome.
gruesome.
Yeah, they're dark.
Yeah.
Fingers get cut off, people get, you know, horrible, hung. I mean, I think he was hung in the original Pinocchio. He was, yeah, I mean, just just
Yeah.
just terrible, terrible, terrible things.
Yeah.
So,
It just harkens back to like the Roman times, what happens to the contestants, or even if you go back to the Bible times, where there's even some messed up stories in there too. Like, yeah, there's
hmm
so much to read on. I mean, Revelation, and also just
hmm
a lot of different
hmm
stories that they don't really talk about in the Bible,
hmm
because I know it's
hmm
messed up, but I feel like stuff like this that is happening now really should be discussed more. Like, you
Oh
just
yeah,
can't
yeah.
just sweep it under the rug.
Yeah. And storytelling today is very, very uh different. Um, I think I think that there's still uh, a traditional way of telling stories, but we're beginning to pull off of them, especially when you look at what's happening. I know we didn't want to talk about society today, but when you're looking in society today, you have truth and alternate truth. You have, well, we just saw what happened. No, you didn't. You saw this. We're having these bias confirmations, people only reading what they want to read and believe, so there's all these alternative realities that are shaping us right now. And so, storytelling is going to basically reflect that, because storytelling reflects our times. Good storytelling, I think, reflects the zeitgeist that we're in currently.
Exactly.
Okay, that was my soapbox, but
Yeah, no worries. We'll definitely continue this in the next part, and we'll also close it out. But if you enjoyed this so far, this nice, I guess, TED Talk discussion, let me know in the comments.
because
And
yeah.
oh, sorry.
No, it was kind of a TED Talk, wasn't it? That was cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see you all in the next part. And until then, stay lovely. Hey, welcome back. So, we don't, I don't have many more questions to ask, but actually, there was one other important one that I was going to segue into the next one, but we just started talking about, but that just makes really good content, anyways. So, like once again, if y'all are enjoying this, let me know. But yeah, I think one of them was a question that you kind of brought up earlier, which was from your acting and stage background. Would you say taking influence from theater really helped you grow as a writer and storyteller?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's really important to note the differentiations. Theater is the realm of speech. So you use your speech because you don't, excuse me, I knows it's just you use your speech to fill in. You don't have the visuals to help you tell the story. So it's verbal. But in film or television, you have the visuals to help you support the story. So it's really, really important to know the difference, because I've read so many screenplays that are just so heavy expositional. They're explaining everything rather than showing. So, in movies and televisions, it's show, don't tell. And in theater, it's more of you're you're showing emotionally, but you still are telling with verbal dialogue. So it's very, very important to know the difference. And if you can get fluent in both, it's really, really helpful because if you can, like I just finished, I wrote a play that's doing really well. It's all dialogue for five women sitting around chairs quilting. It's all dialogue. And I had to figure out a way to use that dialogue to elicit visuals in people's heads because I know so many people are not used to going to theater anymore and they have to be able to see things in their heads visually and create that. And then when I'm writing film or television, I know that I have to get my dialogue down to the sparsest sentence. So I bet, sparsest number of words. So choose those words carefully. Go back to the speech that you want to say, cut it down, cut it down. What are you trying to say? What are you trying to say? And then that's the line of dialogue you write. So when you know the difference, it's so important. I think it's really today in our time of specialization, we forget how important it is to know the whole. So I feel really lucky that I was trained in theater. I was trained as a playwright, and then I was able to move over to television and then film, which was so different, and yet weigh the value of both of those and use each when they're appropriate. So yeah, anybody who's an aspiring writer, again, go see theater.
Because I recently saw the Lion King musical, and I've seen a couple of other ones. I've heard the Back to the Future one is really good, but if you're talking
Yeah.
like traditional theater shows live, I know there's a couple of shows that are out there. I think there was one that I think it was running for a couple of weeks last year at this theater that's just not too far from my house, and it was written and directed. No, it was written by somebody who worked on Animaniacs, Randy Rogel, and I thought it was pretty interesting. So I'll probably see it one of these days, and I'll
Well, see,
I'll put in a
see,
good word for me. Yeah,
yes, but when you talk about the Lion King or a lot of the things that are coming out now, they are
yeah,
based on movies. So the
movies.
theater
Yeah.
came after. Most of the times, well, Cabaret was Cabaret and then it became a movie.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
Chorus Line was the theater and then it became the movie, The Chorus Line.
West
Cat
Side Story.
was,
Yeah, cat.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
they all became movies after. Uh, but you never can. Um, Evan, what is this? Evan, that musical. It was a great play, but it did not make a great movie. So, but
Dear
a
Evan
lot
Hansen.
of Evan Hansen, yeah, it was a great
Yeah.
play, but it did not make a great movie. So, you have to know what is best. Now, for instance, the movie that I'm shooting in July, I'm shooting as a play. Originally was supposed to be a play, and then the pandemic killed that. So I'm shooting it. It's still going to be for, visual for YouTube and for a film, but I'm shooting it as a play. So I'm using the two worlds that I know how to put together and not, and I know that only because I've lived it, but it's kind of hard to do. So I think it's really important uh, to understand when you go see The Lion King, you're seeing a story that has been proven. It already works, made millions of dollars in the box office. But when you go see a new play, it can be really raw. And like when my play came out, what I mean, I got a standing ovation the first night. That, months down after I had many shows under my belt and we had moved from theater to theater to theater, it kept growing. It's a living thing. And I kept rewriting and shaping. That's the beauty of theater, is an original theater, is that you can keep growing and shaping it. Once it's a film, you can't change it. But writing, if you need to learn how to, that writing is rewriting, this rewriting, then developing an original show for the theater is so exciting and so productive and so good for the audience. I think I don't have anything against Lion King or any of those things, but I really kind of, I know it's theater, it's spectacle, uh, but I wouldn't want people to think, to forget the great original theater. I'm going to go see a play in Ventura that my friend's in, that it's a new writer, new playwright. I heard it's great. And I want to support it. If I could remember the title, I would tout it on the podcast, but I can't, so sorry. Um, I just I just think that it's important because those are some of the most creative ideas. Because right now in film and television, Disney just did a new Snow White, which was very controversial. We're doing remakes and remakes and remakes. That's why it's important, Robert, for you to do your own original series, because we got to have new stuff out there. Right now, the majors are just doing, the umpteenth superhero movies. And, I think audiences are getting tired of it. We need
Yeah,
we
like,
need originality, and you're going to see it in little theaters.
yeah, it's like how many retellings of stories are we gonna get? Disney keeps remaking everything that most of them just kind of flop anyway. But I just really want, like, when you look at animation that is being done for like YouTube or just indie, like creators
Mhm.
that aren't being pitched to networks, but they're still having a lot. You could just feel the heart pat and just so much soul that is put into it, and you could just hear and see their own unique voices that are just being put into it without network interferences or just
Mhm.
projects that are just getting screwed over, just get canceled after only one season. So that's pretty
Yeah,
much my take on it.
yeah, no,
Um,
great,
yeah,
agree.
yeah. So what are you looking forward to for the rest of the year? Like, what's something that you're really looking forward to the most? Because you're doing plays. So what is something else that you want to share? That you want to
Well,
discuss?
I'm looking for my next project. I have a bunch of ideas. Um, that excite me. I just really kind of seeing the one that just kicks me out the door, the one that I just, I wake up and I can't stop thinking about it. I'm writing notes. So while I'm finishing, well, I have in my play, I have to add like 25 minutes to my play in order for it to go to Europe. So that's going to be really new, trying to add on to something that also, my play works really well the way it is, but to go to Europe, they need another 25 minutes. So they like longer plays. So that's going to be a big challenge for me. Because usually if it's not broke, you don't want to fix it. And this one I have to see what happens. So that's I'm excited about that, a little scared too. But I'm looking for that next idea. Um, I I have a couple of job prospects. One is for burgeoning musicians, and it's a show I might be hired to write. So I think it would be great actually for me to do a for hire job, just to not always have to come up with. I For the last couple of years I've been just coming up with my own projects, and it would be like it would be nice to take a little resting point. And so I'm up for two for hire jobs. We'll see.
Yeah, we shall see. Um, I guess my final question would be, what's some of your biggest takeaways being in the entertainment industry for pretty much all your life?
Reinvention. Don't count on anything lasting too long. Reinvent yourself, reinvent yourself, reinvent yourself. Keep learning. I went from theater to TV, from TV to film. Now I'm going back to theater. Uh, you just got to keep changing and growing and learning new things. That's my biggest takeaway because the entertainment business does not slow down for anybody. It's a devouring machine, and if we want to produce it, we can't keep producing the same kinds of stories. We have to evolve. So that's my thing. Evolution, change, reinvention of yourself and your talents. That's my takeaway if you want to last. And I've been in the business now for 40 years. So
So that would be your final thoughts or advice to close out this interview.
my final advice is reach outside your comfort zone. Do what you're good at for sure. I mean, you're obviously good at what you're doing. Do what you're good at, but also, like I said, go see theater, go see something you wouldn't want to do, read a book that you might not have read, expand your horizons and pay attention to the zeitgeist, pay attention to what's going on in the world so that you can grow and adjust and don't get left behind.
Yep, absolutely. And since you've plugged in your upcoming stuff, where can people check out social media and where can people, you know, just
You want to,
see
well, if you
updates?
want, well, if you want to know what I'm doing with my film, just go to Weird, WEIRD, detention, like school detention, weirddetention.com, and you'll see that. And then if you want to find out what's going on with the Dead Quilter Society, just Google the Dead Quilter Society.com and our website will come up. We're creating a digital quilt for everybody. You can buy a piece for cheap, a little piece of this digital quilt and tell your story. And we're going to be highlighting different people's stories for the communities. And that's where weirddetention.com or the Dead Quilter Society.
Yep, of course. And for the outro, I usually have the guests say, like for you, for instance, I'm Dev Ross. You might have heard me, might have seen me on the list of projects that you're known for. And this is Station Square Podcast with Robert Jackson whenever you're ready.
And this is what?
Oh, Station Square Podcast with
Station
Robert Jackson.
Square with
Yeah.
Robert Jackson. I hope I get that right. Okay. Should I do it?
Yep. Whenever you're ready.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me on, Robert Jackson of Stage Square Broadcasts. If you don't know me, go check back on those Lambie Four Time sequels or Darkwing Duck at Disney. And thank you.
Yep. Thank you so much. And we'll accept that. Sorry. That's the first take. So yeah. It's been a huge honor getting to speak with you once again. Any goodbyes or are we good?
We're good.
Yeah, I say the same. So thank you so much for watching
Keep me
and
posted with what's going on with your show. I'd love to see it.
oh yeah, for sure. And
Okay.
congrats once again that we've reached a deal for the that strike that was going on for a while, but hey, at least we're making good progress. So thank you so much, SAG, anybody that is involved. And until next time, my friends, stay cool, stay positive, and God bless. Live long and prosper. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Peace.
Bye, Robert.